The Florida Panthers have a new ECHL affiliate, which means that Florida is a hockey state. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to prepare for Thursday and Friday's NHL entry draft, what Bill Zito said all about it, and how there is still hope that even with the lack of draft capital, that the Florida Panthers can still make an impact. All on today's episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Thursday, July 7th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're at your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from PantherParkway.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Monoman12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. And thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On NHL and Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where they'll be covering all the off-season activities around the National Hockey League. So first off, I want to start with a little bit of sad news that's going around in the NHL world. Is about San Jose Sharks defenseman, former San Jose Sharks defenseman and current scout of the team, Brian Marchment, who is the father of Florida Panthers forward Mason Marchment, has unexpectedly passed away at the age of 53. He was actually in Montreal, where the draft is being held, to do the draft, and unexpectedly passed away just yesterday. And just a horrible situation for Brian Marchment and his family to be in all of this. And I never lost a parent, so I can't even imagine what someone like Mason Marchment is going through. And for the privacy of the Marchment family, we don't know what happened, and we shouldn't dig into like what happened either out of their privacy. But the Florida Panthers released a statement saying that their thoughts and prayers are with Brian Marchment, Mason, and the family. And it's just a really tough time for someone like Mason Marchment, who's really starting to getting his hockey career started and being a free agent this offseason. And the reports of Elliot Friedman saying that there's loyalty to the Florida Panthers and trying to re-sign there, and the Florida Panthers having some interest back. Of course, the financials have to work. But I will say, despite all of that, this is all secondary for Mason Marchment right now. And if it takes him not forever, but if it takes him a little bit to make a decision on free agency on where he's going to play next season, we have to be a little patient about that. But we might even get our answers earlier based on personnel moves that might happen that might not have Mason Marchment fit under the cap, and then whenever he's ready to sign with the team that he's ready to sign with. And that Mason Marchment needs this opportunity to grieve and then get his head in the right place to make a decision. Everyone grieves differently, of course, but if it takes him a little bit, I won't be mad at him at all. And I don't know what San Jose's cap situation looks like, on the top of my head at least. I know they have a lot of contracts over $7 million with older players, but I think it will be a really cool story if Mason Marchment ends up signing with the Sharks to honor his dad. And I think that will be a really cool story. Right now, the San Jose Sharks have $5.6 million in cap space right now. So I think that will be a pretty cool story. And it's funny because there's Mason Marchment, who who we spoke about many times about him moving up into ECHL with the Orlando Solar Bears when they were under the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. It's funny because I went to a Kelly Cup playoff game a few years ago with the Orlando Solar Bears, and I don't remember the exact date that I was there. I don't have it documented, so I might have seen Mason Marchment play. I might not have, really not knowing who he was at the time, and it kind of bothers me to this day about that. I don't know the exact game. But speaking of Mason Marchment and Brian Marchment and all, transitioning over to this other topic for the Florida Panthers, Marchment and ECHL, that the Florida Panthers have an agreement, a multi-year agreement with the Florida Everblades to become their new ECHL affiliate, replacing the Greenville Swamp Rabbits as their affiliate, which Estero, Florida is only not even 150 miles away from Sunrise, Florida. You take Alligator Alley west, and you're there within 2 hours. So I think that's pretty cool for the Florida Panthers. The Florida Everblades, when they were under the Nashville Predators organization, won the Kelly Cup championship. And cool story for the Panthers and Everblades, and the fact that now there's two teams. Well, there's three ECHL teams, but now that there are two teams of the Florida teams on the NHL side of things, that they have both their ECHL teams in the state of Florida, is a win-win for the state. It promotes more people to want to play the game. It helps with youth programs as well, and it helps with overall viewership of the game. The fact that I'm sure there are Panther fans listening to this who live on the Gulf Coast. The Panthers they have a representation there. Of course, there's another fan base, of course, as well on the Gulf Coast as well with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm sure this inspires more people to not only get to Florida Everblades games to watch games there, but also to get in the sport. And then they say, who is the owner of this affiliate right here in Estero? And it's the Florida Panthers, just not even 150 miles east of where they're at. So that, in my opinion, is just a great overall situation if you're the Panthers. And it's really cool because the ECHL produces so many great products. I mean, just Florida Panthers alone, we talked about Mason Marchment earlier in this segment. We speak about Ryan Lomberg, who moved up into ECHL with Calgary before eventually signing with the Cats. Chris Drieger as well, who got a big contract, and as well as Mackenzie Weegar. Mackenzie Weegar played some ECHL games as well under his belt. So we could very well see some later round picks for the Florida Panthers this year making their way to Estero, and a good opportunity to see some growth with these players on the Gulf Coast. So I think it's a really cool opportunity for the growth of the game and the growth of these players. I'm not sure if transactions would be from Estero all the way to Sunrise. More likely would be Charlotte, but still, if those players also want to catch an NHL game and want to take a quick visit as well, east, they could as well. So that's a cool situation for the Panthers and their new ECHL affiliate in the Florida Everblades. In the next segment, we're going to discuss Bill Zito's media availability yesterday that he had, where he's going to talk about his approach to tonight's NHL entry draft. But first, we're going to tell you all about Built Bar. And from the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You probably tried the amazing coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built have given coconut brownie chunk the Puffs treatment. That's right, the coconut brownie chunk Built Bar flavor you love in a deliciously chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. But stop drooling and listen. They're good for you. Low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and all delicious. Coconut brownie chunk puffs are only here for a limited time. Go to built.com now to make sure you don't miss out. They're going fast because they taste amazing. All Built bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. The best part about Built Puffs is, of course, they taste amazing, but you can enjoy them guilt-free because they are actually good for you. They are the perfect treat, perfect when you are craving. You got a craving. You need to satisfy your sweet tooth, or you need a quick, healthy snack. They are an excellent source of protein. Delicious coconut, rich, sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow. Stop fantasizing. Get to Built.com to order your box of coconut brownie chunk puffs right now. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. But also, make sure you listen to Locked On NHL because the NHL draft is right around the corner, and our team of local hosts and draft experts are breaking it down with insights and analysis for every first-round pick. Subscribe to Locked On NHL on YouTube for all the latest breakdowns on the NHL draft and more. And some programming notes for Locked On Panthers specifically, because the Florida Panthers do not have a first round pick, is unless something big happens, depending on how late it is. If it's past midnight, we're gonna wait until the next morning for a transaction. But we will be recording early tomorrow morning so that nothing is outdated as far as breaking news, because this is the time where a transaction can happen anytime. Just if you were to listen to my episodes last offseason, especially related to expansion draft, there was a lot of things that I recorded before a transaction happened, not knowing, of course. And we're just going to wait a little bit before round 2 begins on Friday. So tonight is round 1, but the real Panthers draft happens Friday. So we're going to discuss that with Nick Fairbanks. Hopefully he's able to be activated off IR for Friday's episode. But let's continue talking about Bill Zito's media availability on Thursday. He spoke about really his approach with first round picks. He was also asked about Brian Marchment, and just it was really hard for Bill Zito to actually get the words out of his mouth to talk about Brian Marchment. Actually, it took him at least a good pause for 30 seconds, because I mean, you could tell that there was some condolences from Bill Zito's part, but you could also tell that Bill Zito legitimately cares about someone like Mason Marchment. I mean, you see it with the emotion that's shown on him, because of course these general managers, they see these players every single day, and they look up to these people as well. So it's a support system when you're part of a team and part of a franchise as well. But once again, our thoughts and prayers are with the Marchment family during this difficult time. But let's discuss what Bill Zito talked about in the draft. And he says basically that even though that the Florida Panthers don't have any first or second round picks, that their prep stays the same, that this is where it's really tough this is really where the scouting department has really got to make their money, as far as going overseas and seeing players through different leagues, and also making phone calls to different people to get an idea of what this player is like. And of course, we're still in a pandemic, even though it's a regular 82 game season, and the season is starting on time and finishing in mid-April, which we'll discuss actually more tomorrow instead of today. Sorry about that, guys. With the draft going on today, we're going to talk about the schedule on tomorrow's episode. But he says that his prep is the same. Also was asked about the status of Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar as far as their contracts. Said how he spoke to both of their agents, but wasn't expecting Bill Zito to really reveal anything. My expectations were very low as far as what Bill Zito was able to say out loud, because of course they're trained to say certain things and not certain things by their PR team. So just had very low expectations when going into that presser. And he also, same thing with Claude Giroux, asking about the status of his contract. He says, didn't get into any specifics, but he's spoken to all UFA and RFAs. Doesn't tell us anything about the status. So also asked about Andrew Burnett as well, about what his status with the team is, and nothing has changed as well. Spoke about how they're going through the process of evaluating what their staff is going to be, assistant coaches and even front office. So looks like that Andrew Burnett is also still looking for a workaround and seeing what's best for him. And once again, going back to Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar, it's a slam dunk for Jonathan Huberdeau to sign an extension for the Panthers, at least in my opinion. Mackenzie Weegar, not so much. I think they're legitimately going to wait until free agency next year in order and have Mackenzie Weegar test the market and then see what's gonna happen with Weegar. As far as Huberdeau goes, I don't expect this to be a long process when it comes to signing a contract. I mean, Barkov with his contract, it wasn't too long. That he didn't take too long to sign his contract. It was right before training camp started, so there was no drama in for Barkov and his contract. Of course, with a year left, you still have a lot of time in order to get something done. So it was never really a stress for me before Barkov signed his extension. He signed it specifically on October 8th, 2021. If Huberdeau doesn't sign his immediately, it's nothing to freak out about neither, because it could happen at any time, and you'll have a full year before you have the early bird rights, as they say, for talking about someone who's under contract in UFA status, even next season. And I'm really confident that the Panthers will get that done based on their track record with this front office. I mean, we saw with Bill Zito as well with Carter Verhaeghe. He didn't even let him get into his RFA year before extending him. So they got that done right away. Bill Zito is very proactive. He likes to get his guys signed right away and just move on with the next one. And I don't think that this extension for Huberdeau is going to be any different in relation to the Florida Panthers and having another player sign long-term with the team. And for that, once again, I think that Huberdeau and Barkov will likely have the same cap hit. It really would say how one person is not more important than the other. I think that will be a fair cap hit for both Huberdeau and Barkov. Of course, Huberdeau's contract is going to extend one more year than Barkov's. So under contract, we might see Huberdeau last one more year in Sunrise than Barkov, assuming that we can't even tell where the Florida Panthers are going to be at that time, even though that. But hey, Barkov's contract will expire before Huberdeau's. So still no updates there. But Bill Zito didn't really give any answers, or I didn't come out of that press conference knowing more then about what I did prior to hearing Bill Zito, because GMs, they're just not going to tip their hands as far as their draft strategy and looking into trades and signings and all. But here's one thing that I did get. Actually, I did take one thing away from it. A lot of draft analysts, as far as the outside the organizations like the Chris Peters, Corey Pronmans of the world, Sam Constantinos of the world, a lot of them like to say that this specific draft is like a weak draft, quote unquote weak draft. But Bill Zito kind of dodged that and kind of talked about how you never know who's going to have that motivation to be great, and that who's going to be the one to rise up and just because players have egos. Everyone wants to be number one overall. It's likely going to be Shane Wright going to the Montreal Canadiens, and Yaroslav Klubslavsky going to the New Jersey Devils, and Logan Cooley to the Arizona Coyotes. But there are many, many players out of that after that. And some of them will use that as motivation to train consistently and then make a big impact on the specific team. So you never know who's going to shine. And it's all just throwing darts at a board sometimes and seeing what sticks. So that's really the approach to the draft with a lot of these players. And they did speak about something about position of need and best player available. When you're picking 93rd overall, at that point, you're going to pick best player available at that point in the draft. So we don't know which direction. We don't know who's going to be on the board by the time the Panthers pick at 93. So, which helps us transition over to the next segment where we're going to talk about how there is hope for the Panthers in relation to this year's 2022 NHL entry draft. We're going to discuss that next on Locked On Panthers. But first, we're going to tell you all about Rock Auto. And with the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait until the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer? Choose the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save money and time when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, 100% more on the same parts in chain stores or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. You have everything they need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Locked on in there. How did you hear about us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Third and final segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on this Thursday, July 7th. And happy draft day for everyone who celebrates. And, this year was a little different for me personally. Of course, no first round picks or second round picks for the Panthers. So the episodes leading up to the draft had to be a little different for me personally. I'm not going to pretend I know every single prospect coming out of the draft. And of course, the loads of possibilities that the Panthers could have at 93rd overall starting with that. So, of course, when you're in contention mode, the real focus for a team when you're contending for a Stanley Cup is really that next season and trying to go for it. While teams that are near the bottom are like looking more towards the future. The Panthers are not in that position. However, we did speak about picks in volume. Not necessarily high picks, but picks in volume for the Panthers that it can still be very impactful for this team. And let me provide you a little bit of hope of how the Florida Panthers can still draft these players and develop them, and they could still help the Panthers in a few years. And of course, number one, the obvious one is hitting on your picks. Duh. but just an example. We talked about Steve Yzerman before he left to Detroit about all the players that he was able to draft in for the Tampa Bay Lightning and how it's worked. But also there's hope for other players have gone in different rounds based on where they were drafted. So let's start with 93rd overall with the Panthers. Only the second time in history that they've drafted 93rd overall. The other time came in 2010. A few third-round picks that the Florida Panthers even have on their own roster. Duke, Radko Gudas, and Cole Schwitt, who we've spoken about in the last few weeks about him. We expecting Cole Schwitt to fight for a opening night spot in the roster. I know we all have different opinions about Jonas Johansson, but he's also a third round pick as well. So that's another player on the Florida Panthers that were drafted in the third round. Recent ones are Tice Milanich, who was flipped for Ben Sherratt. Justin Sordoff, who won a WHL championship just recently with the Edmonton Oil Kings. John Ludwig, defenseman, is another one. Logan Hutsko, who slipped in the draft for the Panthers. They ended up taking him 89th overall in 2018. Max Gildon, another defenseman in 2017. And a player not on the Panthers that was drafted in the third round but ended up winning a Stanley Cup is Vezina Trophy winner Braden Holtby for the Washington Capitals back in 2008. So Stanley Cup champion, Vezina Trophy winner. There's hope for a 93rd overall pick. So that's where Braden Holtby was drafted in 2008. Their next pick is 125th overall, and the Panthers have never had a pick in 125. But they do have a few fourth-round picks on their squad. Lucas Carlson is one of them, who they're still looking to qualify an offer to, hopefully. Fourth-round pick, 110th overall by Chicago in 2016. Ben Sherratt, 120th by the Atlanta Thrashers before they moved to Winnipeg. And a most recent fourth-round pick for the Panthers was Mike Benning, 95th overall in 2020, who Mike Benning had the game-winning goal for the University of Denver in the Frozen Four championship. So that's a hope for the Panthers, a power play goal specifically for Mike Benning. So that's one. The next one is 157th overall. And the Panthers have had a 157th pick in 1994, where they drafted Matt Odette, 157th in 94. Other fifth-round picks for the Panthers that they have on their roster is Gus Forsling, drafted by Vancouver in 2014. And they drafted a goalie last year in Kirill Grisimyuk. That was a draft pick last year to replace Devin Levi, who they traded in the Sam Reinhart trade. And also, we got to give credit to Bill Zito. Jameson Olive of FloridaPanthers.com actually wrote a great piece on the 2020 draft class that the Panthers had. Of course, we talk about Anton Lundell. Emil Hyman was flipped for Sam Bennett. Tice Milanich was flipped for Ben Sherratt. Devin Levi was flipped for Sam Reinhart. So really, Bill Zito has really used these assets in order to also help him win now as well. So that's another one for the Panthers that they've used to their advantage when it comes to most recent drafts. Sixth round, they have two of them, 3 picks apart. One of them is their own, and one of them is Toronto's via Columbus. That was part of the 3-way trade that they got from Columbus and Carolina, as far as helping Carolina acquire Max Domi. And of course, they traded a 6th-round pick earlier in that trade deadline to get Robert Haig. That was Calgary's 6th-round pick that they got from the Sam Bennett trade, and then got a 6th-round pick back to help Max Domi get to the Carolina Hurricanes. So they got a 6th-round pick for free, basically, for Robert Haig. Never have had a 186th or 189th overall pick, but a few 6th-round picks on their roster currently is Petteri Lindbaum, who was drafted 176th by St. Louis in 2012. Another one's Maxim Mammon, even though he's going back to the KHL. He was drafted by the Panthers in 2016. And also notable players drafted 186 was Jason Demers from San Jose in 2008, and Derek Dorsett of Columbus in 2006. So those are also other notable players that have been drafted 186 and 189th. Last pick for the Panthers will be 221st. Never had that pick in their franchise history, but we talk about this all the time. I mean, around NHL circles at least. Can you think about a 7th-round pick that has been an impact in the NHL and has won Stanley Cups? It's by the name of Patrick Hornquist. The very last pick in 2005, 230th overall by Nashville. and you just never know who's gonna have that motivation in order to become great in their craft. Marcus Navarro is another one as well, by Columbus in 2015. Bill Zito had a big influence in drafting him, and of course, homegrown talent in Mackenzie Weegar. Same draft as Alexander Barkov, 206 overall, and he's a top pairing defenseman. Even though, me personally, I see Mackenzie Weegar going into next season probably as like the second pairing defenseman, because I think it's better for the balance of the lineup for the Panthers. As far as other picks for the Panthers, Brayden Hache, who was just drafted 210th last year, is playing with the Kingston Frontenacs, who Shane Wright, who's projected to go number 1 overall, is likely rumored to stay in junior hockey next year with Kingston. So Brayden Hache could also play with Shane Wright as well once again. We spoke about Devin Levi earlier about flipping him for the 212th overall in the 2020 NHL entry draft. And what really helped Devin Levi was really his World Junior performance in 2020, going up against Spencer Knight on the other side. And then, of course, a great season at Northeastern, a Hobey Baker, top 10 in Hobey Baker voting. And what really hurt his chances to win the Hobey Baker was when he went to the Olympics with Team Canada just recently, and he didn't even play. He was the backup goaltender for Team Canada in the Olympics this year. And, that might have hurt his chances in order to win the Hobey Baker. But still, a great opportunity for Devin Levi as he increased his draft stock, and of course a chance for Devin Levi to maybe be the franchise goaltender for the Buffalo Sabres once they are ready to contend, because everything that Buffalo's doing, I kind of like what they're doing as far as what they got in return for Jack Eichel. Owen Powers drafted number 1 overall. He's going to be joining the Sabres this season. And speaking of University of Michigan, we spoke about Owen Power. Mackie Samoskevich, a first-round pick for the Panthers. We're expecting him to have a bigger role this season at the University of Michigan. Luke Hughes, speaking of another University of Michigan player who's under the New Jersey Devils, he's going to be returning to the University of Michigan as well. So that University of Michigan once again is going to be a big force to be reckoned with in college hockey. So that's going to be fun. We're going to see increased role for Mackie Samoskevich, and we're going to see increased role for these Panther players in Charlotte as well. So a good opportunity for each and every one of them. So I went over that exercise to give you a little hope that, remember, picks by volume. Remember that there is opportunity there. I don't know how much movement that we're going to see the Panthers make in rounds 3 through 7 as far as trading up, trading back. We might see a situation maybe in the 6th round where they trade up and they give from 186 to 160 something, and then just trade that 189th pick. And, if it's worthwhile and if they see that that's the best player available, we've got to continue to trust Bill Zito and his scouting department in order to see what these players are made of. And one thing that Doug Blagans and Jameson Olive also spoke about on Territory Talk yesterday was really how that with the Seattle Kraken not being part of the organization anymore, as far as Charlotte, that you might see more of the players in their 20s to 21-year-old age group drafted by the Panthers late in order to fill some of their spots in Charlotte as well. But once again, it's also an opportunity for development as well. So it's not a detriment to their development as well. So we might see all sorts of movement, and we might not see movement at all. However, when the Panthers do eventually pick their players, we're going to go over every single one of them and what draft evaluators say about who they are, about what's their strengths, what's their weaknesses, and and if we could project whether they're going to sign with the team, and when they do, what their role could possibly be, what their ceiling could be. So that's going to be fun on Monday's episode of Locked On Panthers. But tomorrow, we're going to be bringing in Nick Fairbanks. Hopefully he's activated off the IR to discuss everything that happened on draft night on Thursday night. And if there is a possible transaction for the Panthers as far as a cap clearing move, we'll be talking about all of that, and we'll be discussing the schedule for the Panthers. I know you guys wanted to talk about this today, but with the draft, there was so much more important things to talk about, and we could save the schedule until tomorrow's episode, where I have a lot of things to say about this schedule, good and bad, in relation to it. So tune into tomorrow's episode. We'll discuss more about that. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steel Road, and we'll be covering all the offseason activities around the National Hockey League. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day, and for your second listen of the day, make sure you listen to today's episode of Locked On NHL. From each draft pick to every free agency signing, Locked On NHL has you covered every Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.